You talk about the ill effects of conditioning. The many philosophers, psychologists, philosophers and so on, say that only through proper conditioning can man think and act clearly. What's your answer? I'll read it again. You talk about ill effects of conditioning. Yet many psychologists, philosophers and so on say that only through proper conditioning can man think and act clearly. What's your answer? Now, how would you answer that question? It was put to you, and you must have thought about it. How would you respond to that? What would be your approach to it? How do you listen to a question of this kind? Do you, after having read many, perhaps some philosophers and psychologists and books and all that kind of thing, are ready to respond from your collected memory and answer that question? Or, putting aside what others have said, how would you answer it? First, isn't it obvious, I think it is, that all human beings throughout the world, after so many millions of years, are conditioned. That's a fact. They are conditioned by the religions, by establishments of governments, by the economic condition, climate, food, clothes, by their family, by their education, and so on. All human beings, right through the world, are conditioned. That's an obvious, acceptable, reasonable fact. And there are those philosophers and psychologists say that you must accept this conditioning. You've heard about that too. And they assert, some of them, that the conditioning can never be changed. Human condition can never be transformed. There can never be a mutation from this conditioning. And so, make the best of it. And if you're a clever writer and have the gift of the tongue, you enlarge that. And you become famous. And we poor laymen accept the people who are clever, erudite, and go on with their assertions. But if one can put all that aside and look at ourselves, how do we deal with this fact, which is that we are all conditioned? If you live in India, you are conditioned a particular way. Religion, superstition, ignorance, poverty, the climate, the food, the lack of space, overpopulation. And as you come along east, west, same phenomena is going on. The Christians are conditioned 2,000 years, after 2,000 years, by their society, their culture, and so on. Philosophers and psychologists apparently do not investigate themselves. They have theories, they have experimented on pigeons, animals, and from that they come to certain conclusions. But they never say, look, I am conditioned. My condition is my religion, my society, my family, my name, the tradition, and see if I cannot possibly undo all that and discover if it is at all possible to free the mind from this conditioning. Right? Now, can we do that together now? You understand? Am I making this speaker is making itself clear? We are conditioned to live in America. You're conditioned by affluent society, by this enormous drive for pleasure, entertainment, and the fanciful religion and romantic East with their gurus and all that stuff. We are unfortunately conditioned. Now can we discover, become aware of this conditioning? I am conditioned. Suppose I was born in India with all the nonsense that goes on around religion, and they are very, very orthodox. At the time the speaker was born, tremendously so-called religious, certain Abrahamic class with their tradition and so on. Now, if one is aware of that, can one actually free oneself from all that heavy, from 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years of so-called civilization? That's the problem the questioner asks. Can I? The questioner says, can I be free from all this? Who is speaking the truth? The philosophers, the psychologists, the people who assert that you cannot possibly change the conditioning of man. Human nature can be modified, but can never radically be transformed. If you accept that, which is very convenient and happy, you can trot along for the rest of your life, living in a small circle of conditioning, and say that is inevitable. But if one goes into it much more deeply, if one is want to find out what the conditioning is and whether it's possible to really, very deeply, at the very root of this conditioning, be free of all that. That's the question. Now, how does one set about it? I see I'm conditioned. What do we mean by that word conditioning? The brain being very, very pliable, subtle, has an extraordinary capacity to absorb, hold, confine itself to a certain limitation, feeling that it is safe in that limitation, which is really the conditioning. I hope you are following. Am I going too fast? And it feels safe in that conditioning, secure, protected. And it is unwilling to let go and look. Unwilling because of the long habit, the long, many thousand years of being confined, limited to a particular experience, knowledge, and all the rest of it. So it feels completely secure in that conditioning. And it accepts what the psychologists, the philosophers, the other people say. Live with it. Be happy in it. Make the best of it. Better bathrooms, better relationship, always little better, little more convenient. And all the psychologists help us to be a little more happy, a little more adjustable, a little more accepting what is this condition involves. Now, if one says, I really want to find out, not what the psychologists others say, but I really want to find out if this condition can ever be resolved. First, what are the results of this conditioning? What happens to a mind or to a brain that is conditioned? Before you can say, I will be free of conditioning. Please, are we meeting each other, or shall we go on with this? You are doing it yourself now, I'm not doing it for myself. This is not group analysis or group therapy, all that kind of nonsense, but we are trying to find out whether it's possible to free the brain from its heavy conditioning. When one is conditioned, when the brain is conditioned, either that conditioning brings various forms of conflict. Right? I'm conditioned as a Hindu, suppose, or a Catholic, or a Protestant, or whatever it is. Naturally, the brain, being so conditioned, becomes atrophied, right? Are we following each other? Have you noticed, if you keep on repeating that you are Christian, that you must behave this way, that you must be like that there is only one Savior, and so on, so on, so on, this very repetition, this constant acceptance of something unreal, which has no factual actuality, then the brain must inevitably become more and more atrophied. Right? It's so obvious, you can see them all. When you are constantly repeating, I'm a British, or I am Catholic, I am this, I am that, then naturally brain will inevitably become mechanical, will inevitably become narrow, and gradually wither, become atrophied. That's what's going on, right? That's one of the results of conditioning. There are many other factors of this conditioning, which is separation, division. Where there is division, there must be conflict. We are, right? Please, we are examining ourselves, looking at our conditioning, and investigating that conditioning. The speaker is not investigating, but you are doing the investigation, only I am verbalizing it, right? Let's be clear on that point. You're not listening to the speaker and so accepting what he's saying, but you are actually looking at your own condition, if you are aware of it, if you want to go into it. If not, it's all right. But if you are inquiring into it, you can observe the results and the consequences of this conditioning. Then, the next question is it possible to be free of all this? Why? Why should one be free of it? Because the very examination and the reason, sanity, points out one cannot live constantly in a narrow little groove, right? Which emphasizes naturally the egocentric activity, right? So what is one to do? I am conditioned, if I am, and I realize the consequences of it. Then, is it possible to be free of all that conditioning? Is it possible, bit by bit, you understand? Little by little. That may take me for the rest of my life. I may be free of it just as I'm dying. That's not very amusing. It has no meaning. So I ask, is it possible to be aware without any prejudice, without any choice, just be aware of my conditioning? And then is it possible, not allowing time as a factor to dissolve this conditioning, not allowing time, you see, I might make my time being, I will do it gradually. So, is it possible to look at this conditioning without the time element at all? This is not something cranky, faddistic, some new fad, something you have to accept, but you can see reason points this out. Reason says you are conditioned, and reason points out that if you take time over it, many years, you have other forms of condition going on, right? So there is only one fact, one act that must absolutely dissolve the totality of the conditioning. Right? I'm putting this question to you. Look at it first. Don't say, is it possible? It's not possible. And brush it aside. I'm born as a Protestant or a Catholic, or have a particular condition with regard to nationalism, or I am conditioned to the pursuit of only pleasure at any price, which is what is happening in this country. Entertainment. Now, can I, not allowing time, which is asking a tremendous question, you understand? Because our brain, which has evolved through time, right, through millions and millions of years, we have come to this point, which is a great tragedy, because we look at ourselves, and the brain is evolved in time, and we are asking something. We are demanding the brain to act totally differently. Are we following each other this? Which is reasonable, you understand? The question may be unreasonable. The question being not to allow time. That may be unreasonable. But we see if we allow time, there's other forms of factors entering which will also condition. So the mind can never be free from conditioning if the mind allows time to interfere with the dissolution of conditioning. Is this clear? Huh? So I must be apt, the brain must understand this, that it has evolved through time and is being challenged. A crisis being brought to it, and say you must solve it, you must be free of time. And that says that's impossible. That's your natural reaction, isn't it? You can go on from that. I can go on, but you understand? See what takes place when the future is now. I wonder if you see that. The future is time, isn't it? Tomorrow is time. And if there is no tomorrow, I have to act so completely now. Or invite the future now. I want to follow this. So that the brain has to face this fact that though it has been trained, educated, conditioned, shaped in the process of time, and now it's facing a challenge which says think or act totally differently, which is not of time. I wonder if you see all this. Are we asking this too much? I mean, what do you say? So that is the real question. The philosophers and the psychologists and others have said, accept human condition, modify it, give time so that it becomes more and more cultured through knowledge, and knowledge becomes all important. Knowledge it is time, because knowledge means accumulation, which means time. I don't know if you follow this. And we accept all this because it's very convenient, very natural, apparently very natural. And also it's very convenient, comforting, that have some years and so on and so on. Now, when the brain is challenged that it is not through time that the condition can be dissolved, then it says impossible and stuck there. That's what's happening to you now. I don't know if you observe, if you are aware of the fact. Right? Can go on from there a little bit. The speaker can go on verbally, explain, but there's no value unless you yourself actually perceive it, see the truth of this fact that if you allow time, and time is not a factor that can dissolve or uncondition the mind, as when the mind is conditioned, the consequences are what we live with, our struggle, conflict, misery, all the rest of it, which is part of our condition. So can the brain be free of, able to look at this problem, this challenge, without any fear, without any choice, face it. Then the brain becomes extraordinarily active, doesn't it? I wonder if you notice it. You have broken the tradition. And then one asks, what is freedom then? You understand? The freedom that we have taken for granted to do what we like to do, that's what we call freedom, right? Especially in this country, we're all free to do what we like, and immediately, if possible. The consequence of that, you know what it is. That's not freedom, obviously. So freedom then means the brain being free of the conditioning and is incapable of thinking in terms of time. Just going through slowly. I need time to learn how to drive a car. I need time to learn a language. A month, 6 weeks or 3 months. I need time to learn any skill. There I need time. But I discover that time psychologically is not necessary. The time has conditioned us, right? Wonderful. And the question of time, both the physical as well as psychological time. The physical time is necessary to go from here to where one lives. But time as the future of me getting better and better and better, me trying to become somebody psychologically, is it a fact? Or is it an illusion which thought has created? I am not happy, but I will be happy. Heaven is in that hole, and ultimately I'll go there. All the evangelistic promises, you know that's going on in this country. So, can the brain be free of conditioning as time? You understand my question? And the philosophers and the psychologists say that's impossible. And they're being specialists, having written books, published, and selling, they become famous, and we laymen accept it. We accept the specialists. Right? That's one of our conditioning. So when you look at all this, sensitively aware of what the others are saying, and sensitively aware of one's own conditioning, and seeing that time is a factor that really shapes the brain to a particular condition. It has taken 2,000 years for Christians to accept all that. Tremendous propaganda which is going on now. And the Hindus with their propaganda of 3,000, 4,000 years. It has taken time. The constant repetition. Jesus is the Savior. They have their own pattern in India and Japan, in China. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Obviously, brain becomes atrophied, and probably that's what is happening to humankind. Right? Sorry when it's taken so long about one question.